Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today I will present a case analysis of Hurricane Katrina, Cyclone Nargis, and Hurricane Irma. First, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Nurul Nuhanafisa binti Zailani. So, let's start with the introduction. Tourism is influenced by many factors, including external events like natural disasters, which, while unrelated to tourism itself, can significantly impact tourist flows. These events disrupt society and individuals, often altering destination choices due to safety, accessibility, or recovery concerns. So, this case study highlights two natural disaster events: Hurricane Katrina, Cyclone Nargis, and Hurricane Irma. Hurricane Katrina 2005 United States is a Category 5 storm that struck the Gulf Coast that caused severe flooding devastation and over 113 lives were lost. The tourism impact at New Orleans faced widespread destruction of landmarks, hotels, and infrastructure. Next, Cyclone Nargis 2008 Myanmar is a Category 4 cyclone that killed over 138,000 people and one of the deadliest cyclones in the history. The tourism impact centered around destinations like Yangon, Bagan, and Indian Lake was severely affected. The infrastructure was damaged and humanitarian crisis led to a sharp decline in international travel. Next, Hurricane Irma 2017 Caribbean is a Category 5 hurricane that caused widespread devastation in the Caribbean island. The impact on tourism, the tourism-dependent economies were devastated. The damage to infrastructure, airports, and hotels and attractions was destroyed. So, what is the objective of this case study? First, to evaluate the effects of natural disasters on tourism industries in impacted areas. Second, to understand the challenges and strategies involved in recovering tourism-dependent areas. Third, to provide recommendations for improving disaster preparedness and resilience within the tourism sector to minimize the future impact. So, let's move the case study analysis. First, for pre-crisis assessment, Hurricane Katrina have inadequate lift systems and insufficient disaster preparedness that left New Orleans vulnerable to catastrophic flooding. While Cyclone Nargis, the Myanmar lacked an effective early warning systems and disaster preparedness measures that exposed coastal population to severe impact. And Hurricane Irma, some disaster readiness in the Caribbean, and many islands had insufficient infrastructure resilience to withstand the storm's intensity. For crisis response, at Hurricane Katrina, the response was delayed and poorly coordinated. The significant gaps in evacuation, rescue, and resource distribution efforts. For Cyclone Nargis, the Myanmar government restricted international aid and it delayed the response efforts and worsened the humanitarian crisis. For Hurricane Irma, the emergency response across affected islands, like some regions, received timely aid while others were struggled. Next, for post-crisis recovery, for Hurricane Katrina, the recovery was prolonged and focused on rebuilding lives, like restore infrastructure to revive New Orleans tourism industry. For Cyclone Nargis, the recovery was slow due to limited international assistance, with long-term rebuilding of homes and livelihood that remained a challenge. For Hurricane Irma, the recovery faced a lengthy process to rebuild resorts, airports, and infrastructure and revive tourism-dependent economies. So, what is challenge and success faced by government and tourism industry? For the challenge, first, poor preparedness. Government were not fully prepared for the scale of the disaster in the two natural disaster event. Second, slow response. The response to this crisis was delayed and poorly coordinated. Third, long recovery times. Bureaucratic inefficient, slow rebuilding in New Orleans, Myanmar struggled due to limited resources and political isolation, while Caribbean islands faced financial challenges in restoring damaged tourism infrastructure. Fourth, damage to tourism image that can give safety concerns and loss of attractions, lead to declined tourist arrivals, and putting further strain to the local economies. So, next, for the success, first, international aid and support. Global assistance helped in the recovery efforts. Second, tourism revival efforts. New Orleans used cultural heritage and festivals to attract the tourists. Caribbean nation promote unaffected areas through the campaign, and Myanmar rebuilt key infrastructure for gradual recovery. Third, improve disaster preparedness. The crisis led to a better disaster planning and risk management in all three natural disaster events. So, the Caribbean and other regions began focus on making tourism infrastructure more resilient to future disasters. Comparative analysis of similarities and differences. For similarities, survey impact on tourism. All three disasters caused widespread destruction to tourism infrastructure, lead to significant decline in visitor number and an economic challenge. Inadequate preparedness. The affected regions lack sufficient disaster preparedness. Slow recovery process. Rebuilding efforts in all three cases were prolonged. Global attention. Each disaster attracts international attention, lead to varying levels of aid and support for recovery. Focus on resilience post-recovery. All regions recognize the need to improve disaster preparedness and build resilience in tourism to prevent future crises. So, the differences. First, geographical impact. For Hurricane Katrina, the impact to the geography is devastated New Orleans and Gulf Coast that serve flooding from reef breaches. For Cyclone Nargis, it destroyed the Myanmar's Irrawaddy Delta and affected rural areas and agriculture. For Hurricane Irma, it hit multiple Caribbean islands and caused near total destruction in some areas. Next, tourism industry. For Hurricane Katrina, it was well-established tourism industry, but it was severely disrupted and supported by federal aid. For Cyclone Nargis, it have emerging tourism sector, but it was halted due to lack of infrastructure and support. For Hurricane Irma, the tourism-dependent regions and uneven recovery across all the island, so the global aid, regional support, the recovery efforts. Next, government response. For Hurricane Katrina, it was delayed and poorly coordinated at multiple levels. For Cyclone Nargis, it was slow and hesitant, with reluctant to accept the international aid. For Hurricane Irma, it gave varied responses, with some islands relied heavily on external aid. Last one, preparedness. Hurricane Irma was weak leaves and poor evacuation planning happened. For Cyclone Nargis, no disaster management framework or early warning at all. For Hurricane Irma, it gave mixed levels of disaster preparedness across all the region. Next, the effectiveness of different crisis management strategies. For pre-crisis preparedness, in all three cases, pre-crisis preparedness was inadequate, significantly increasing the disaster's impact. New Orleans lacked proper leaf maintenance, Myanmar had no disaster management framework, and Caribbean islands had inconsistent preparedness for Hurricane Irma. So, strong infrastructure, risk assessment, and evacuation plans are vital to reduce disaster impacts. Crisis response. For coordination in New Orleans, Myanmar refusal of international aid and Caribbean response was mixed due to extensive damage from the Hurricane Irma. So, the timely, coordinated response and clear communication are essential in a crisis. Post-crisis recovery. Post-crisis recovery strategies vary in success. New Orleans focused on cultural heritage. Myanmar recovery was slowed and hindered by limited resources, while Caribbean nations used marketing campaigns to resume tourism. So recovery needs to prioritize infrastructure, visitor confidence, and long-term resilience. So what is the long-term impact on tourism? For Hurricane Katrina, the tourism declined due to infrastructure damage and safety concerns, and give slow rebuilding delayed the recovery. So the cultural heritage helped restore the tourism, eventually strong recovery due to resilience. For Cyclone Nargis, tourism stagnated due to limited resources and political isolation. The recovery was slow and infrastructure lagged behind the other competitors, and it highlighted need for better disaster management. For Hurricane Irma, severe damage to tourism infrastructure and uneven recovery across all the island. So, marketing campaigns helped to restore the tourism and emphasize the need for disaster resilience infrastructure. Recommendation for crisis management in the tourism industry. First, pre-crisis preparedness. conduct risk assessment and build disaster resilient infrastructure, develop evacuation plans and collaborate with stakeholders, and use technology for real-time updates during crisis. Second, crisis response coordination. Establish centralized crisis management teams, ensure clear timely communication with tourists and stakeholders, and partner with international aid organizations. Post-crisis recovery. Rebuild infrastructure with resilient designs, launch marketing campaign to restore tourist confidence, and support small tourism business in recovery. Long-term resilience. Diversify tourism offerings and promote sustainability, and train tourism staff in crisis management. Learn from past crises. Apply lessons from previous disasters to improve planning. Regularly update crisis management plans based on real-world experience. So, the importance of preparedness, communication, and collaboration. First, communication. Real-time communication keeps tourists informed and reduces the panic. Accurate, timely updates are critical during crisis. Preparedness. Conduct risk assessment and build resilience infrastructure. Create clear evacuation plans to protect the tourists. The poor planning, like in Katrina and Cyclone Nargis, worsened the crisis, emphasizing the need for proactive measures. Collaboration. Strong partnership between governments, tourism boards, and international organizations improve coordination and resource sharing. For example, the Wicked Irma showed the importance of collaboration for faster recovery. Conclusion. The case study of Hurricane Katrina, Cyclone Nargis, and Hurricane Irma reveals significant gaps in tourism crisis management, like poor preparedness, uncoordinated response, and variant recovery outcomes. So, these crises highlight the importance of implementing risk assessment, resilient infrastructure, and clear evacuation plans to improve preparedness. By learning from these past crises, and applying these lessons, destinations can enhance their crisis management strategies, build long-term resilience, and create a sustainable tourism industry capable of adapting to future challenges. And that's all from me. Thank you for watching and listening.